that easy.
I know. You got to get on your game, man.
Morgan, what? It's not even Friday. What the heck?
It's Tuesday? What the heck? Well, welcome everyone to this special Tuesday edition of the B2B Power Hour. I cannot believe we have these two wondrous guests with us today. Nick, do you want to explain maybe a little bit about why we're covering this topic today and what we're talking about?
Yeah. So, as part of we're just doing our research to figure out what you guys needed. And one of the things that just kept coming up more and more and more is I never got onboarded. And so we started digging in. So, what does that mean? And I realized very quickly that I had more questions than answers. So, in typical B2B Power Hour style, what did we do, Morgan?
We found two rockstar guests. And here's the thing, folks. They do have proper last names. But for the purposes of today, please welcome to the stage Savage Steph and Sparkplug Steph, our two wonderful rockstar enablement guests to the show. Hi, Sparkplug Steph. Hi, Savage Steph.
Hello.
The full entry was so good.
When you said proper last names, I was like, are we about to have a joke here? Like, this is
No.
a problem. Hi, for everyone I don't know, my last name is actually White, which sometimes that turns into a joke. Is that a real last name? Or am I just trying to be more descriptive? Yeah. But Steph, your entrance there was just like, threw me off the game.
I am known for a good party trick, a good, good entrance type song.
I'm into it. I'm into it. Well, thank you for both being here today. I'm really thrilled. This is definitely one of those sorts of shows where we get to talk with two amazing powerhouses and download as much as possible out of your brains in our short time together, and then share it and distribute it to the world so everyone can bask in your brilliance. So if you're here today, drop a hi in chat. We'd love to say hello. Hi, I saw Lauren joined. Nick, where do you want to start with Steph and Steph?
Ooh, Steph squared. Where do we start? Actually, you know what? I was doing in all my research, one of the funniest things that never came up, even though I think it gets treated as one and the same, is what is the difference between orientation and onboarding? Because I think they're not the same thing.
They are definitely not the same thing.
Say more, say more, say more.
Yeah.
Orientation is an HR function. Onboarding is a more role-specific function. If we're talking sales enablement, my wheelhouse, or revenue enablement, that is the role-specific immersion into your role. I do think that there are a couple phases of like your new hire journey. And I can unpack that if you want me to.
Please, as much as you want.
Yeah, please.
Well, we'll take anything you can give us.
I think there's a hype phase, right? So kind of that like get ready to get ready, like be really excited. You're starting, lots of communication. And that's, I would say, a little bit of both. Your potentially sales, org, and HR. Then I think there's this immersion phase, which is drinking from a fire hose, essentially, right? Like lots of policies, compliance, read this, sign your life away here, just kidding. Here's your laptop, do this training. And maybe that's a couple days. And then I think there's this, and I think I kind of messed up a little bit. I meant to call it like a cultivation, but like that's where you really get into the meat on the bones of your role, where you are understanding your job, your functionality, why am I here, what am I doing, what impact am I making? So yeah, I feel like there's a couple different phases. And then my favorite, which I think I don't want to spoil our later, but I think there's a fourth phase, but we'll talk about that later.
Ooh.
I always liken it to orientation. Like I have this mental image of like you get dropped in a forest. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm in Canada, aka the Canadian Steph in some of these circles. So I'm going to take you back to nature. You get dropped off on the side of the road in a forest. Orientation is your orienteering. Where the heck are you? How do you get around? What do you need to know to find your way? So where do you fit in the org? It's your compass, 150%. And onboarding is how do you do your job? So the first part is just figuring out where's my North Star? Who do I need to know? Who's on my team? Who do I call for help? And the other piece is how do I effectively do this role I've been hired into? And that second stage is a process. It is not a once and done. It's an ongoing thing.
But I would say, if I can just kind of go off of that, I would say most attitudes are that second phase, Stephanie, is like, I don't know, call it a week, right? And then you're like, you're good, right? Ready to go? Ready to do this? Now go hit the quota.
Yeah, good luck, right? We're going to release you into the woods. Yeah, have fun. That's interesting.
Yeah, never experienced that before.
I was about to say, gosh, I'm sure everybody has probably been thrown into the wilderness before. One thing that's stood out to me about both of the sort of processes or sequences that you laid out is obviously there's a big like HR function to the early pieces. But then when it comes to onboarding, it feels a little bit hazier in terms of how it can be structured and who's in charge of it and how it needs to be arranged. So for each of you, what role should sales management play in sales onboarding?
Ooh, can I go?
Yeah.
Okay, so after a lot of different trial and error, I've tried different things and it really depends on your org. But first of all, I love a good spreadsheet as an onboarding plan. And I love one that builds on your competencies, right? And so if we think about the employee journey as onboarding, so I define that as a month. And no, that's not, you know, everything about your job as a salesperson in a month, but it's you're able to learn and demonstrate your core competencies and your core foundation in that month. And then you have your ramping period, right? You're starting to take on quota, you're starting to engage with prospects or accounts, and your skill development and competencies are continued to be assessed and supplemented. And then you get into performance and then you get into mastery, which is what Steph was talking about there. You need to be so clear and deliberate who owns onboarding. The clearest way we now do it is in our onboarding plans, the onboarding tab is literally owned by the enablement partner. The ramping tab has clear ownership. That's 50% the direct manager, 50% the enablement partner. And after that, enablement drops to 10 to 20% once the rep is fully ramped. And that makes it very clear to us as we're developing each skill set, who owns it. As we're validating, hey, can you present an effective business case, Steph? I have no doubt you can. However, who should be the one evaluating that? Is your enablement partner the best person to do it? Or does it need to be your manager who can really like get into the nuances of the languages that you're using? So I go back to basics. I make it super clear so that in every system and tool, you have clear ownership of who's the grader and who owns that stage of the employee process. So the 1 to 4 stages of their journey.
Whew. That was a good one. Steph, what do you think? What do you got? Anything you want to add to that?
So I would say my time here at LoadSmart is a little, I'll call it gray, because when I first joined the organization, I was actually under HR reporting into our chief people officer. And we were doing onboarding for everyone that entered the company. So I had somebody on my team doing onboarding. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
So I took a very pragmatic approach. So we had our chief customer officer join us. I believe it was in April. We had lots of conversations about where should enablement live. Probably not under HR. So I love my HRBP folks. I love them to death. We now collaborate. We handed the keys to the kingdom of onboarding to HR, and we exited stage left, and we are now living under the sales org, the revenue org. So I report to the chief revenue officer, chief customer officer now, And we are now just enabling those revenue-facing teams. And we have, I would say, it's not growing pains, but I think to Steph's point, we've been dabbling a little bit with like, how do we do things? We just had a conversation, I believe it was last week when we all returned from kind of a break, to say, for 2023, do we have the right kind of Goldilocks approach when it comes to that company orientation? Is a week too long? Do we need to kind of, I recommended drip campaigning things out within the first 30, 60 days for orientation so that we're maximizing the time for our salespeople so they're not sitting through a 3-week onboarding, right? So you're thinking week 1 orientation, week 2, 3 onboarding. To Steph's point, I also included a new role within our team, a sales coach that is handling that level 2, 3, 4, right? Of that ramp of the skill and competency refinement and then mastery, because we felt like we've got people who are doing onboarding and there's always going to be people onboarding, but that role also can't be then doing all these other things and building all these other programs. So we had to get very, I'm going to say creative, but I had to get creative with like what that role is. It's skill coaching, it's tool coaching. They're kind of doing a lot of things now. They're building out programs or assessing for gaps in skills and competencies, but it's ongoing. And I think, will the tweaking ever end, Steph? I mean, I don't know.
No.
Right? I mean, that's the evolution too, right?
And that's what I was going to say. It shouldn't be done. Like my joke is always, our work is never done, as I cry inside, because it is not. Because every onboarding cohort you have, you should be saying, how did we do this week? What really helped you this week? And what do you know now that you wish you knew last week? And every hiring class, and like, feel free to debate me, everybody, but I believe that every hiring class should be like an iOS update. Like you're getting that like 0.001 update every time a new user is coming in. It's a little bit better and a little bit better, because that is what we do. It's continuous improvement. It's the 1% that makes the difference.
You have to reiterate, and you have to do those retrospectives to identify, okay, maybe we switch this, timing up and bring them and do this shadow a little earlier because that might get the muscle memory going a little quicker. Or we're really relying a lot on the data of our sales readiness scores. So like assessing in our systems pre and post learning something, their readiness and their ability to do the role. And so I'm finding that including that as part of the onboarding classes really effective in bringing kind of some of those aha moments, like, oh, we didn't think about that. That would be good to do next time. So
isn't that kind of why we hold off on doing things in the first place? Because so many people are scared of messing up, so they just don't do anything. So they push and push and push until it's perfect. And I feel like this is just one of those perfect moments. What did Amazon call it, Morgan? The bar raiser. So instead of trying to get it perfect, just try to raise the bar every time you're onboarding. And then eventually, over time, it's going to be the best it possibly can, instead of trying to cheat your way to the best and hope, get it right off the bat. Because if life were that way, things would be a lot easier.
I would say we'd all be perfectly onboarded, probably.
Right.
And if we think about it as like building blocks, and Nick, you're so right. I would rather fall down 1 step than 5. And I would rather climb 1 step at a time than 10. And if you are going to be in a 5 to 6 month sales cycle, if you're an AE and maybe you're selling into enterprise, right? B2B enterprise in particular, 5 to 6 months. I'm not waiting until the post-mortem after I won or lost to be evaluating the calls of that deal. You can be sure I've got time blocked every week. I'm listening to calls. I'm looking at the emails. I'm looking at the engagement of our digital sales room. What is happening on that deal? If you wait till the end, it's too late. If you only update your onboarding program once a year, you're only going to see improvements once a year. Mm-hmm. Why? Go get it. Go get it. Go get your success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think of some of the best experiences I've had with onboarding, and it started before I actually started at the company. And like they sent out information, they gave me kind of like a cheat sheet of what to expect. So I think the one thing that's really tough, and I've seen it in a lot of documentation while I've been trying to study to really understand this, is what it means to be an insider. And so I'm curious, how does that weigh into your guys' onboarding? Is it something that everybody should consider, or is it just another fancy term that people are using?
Can I ask a qualifying question first?
Absolutely.
Or clarification? What do you mean by an insider?
So the way I've heard it used is people inside do things a certain way. So it's almost like that. I read it as culture.
Knowledge? I call it the tribal knowledge. No, is that what you're kind of alluding to?
Yeah, I think it's fair to call it that, because once you've worked, we all, whether you want to call it a clique or however you want to explain it, once you've worked somewhere for a while, especially in a certain function, and you haven't moved around in that company, there's definitely like an inside track. Do you think it's important for people when they're starting at a new company to be socialized, invited to the inside, or is it really not that important?
Oh, I have a strong opinion on this one.
Fire away.
Okay. When we think about you are getting oriented in your first week, and HR or people operations, whoever it is, the people who are giving you your compass play a big role in that. People are the core of what's going to make you successful. Your relationships. The sooner you start building those relationships, the better. If you don't already have coffees blocked into your onboarding schedule for new hires coming in, go do it now. Make those coffees cross-functional. Who is the demand gen partner that works in their segment? Who is subtle stuff, but who is, the customer success leader for their segment that they should know? You need to make sure that you've got those relationships starting to build. Here's why. In my first couple of weeks, my leader had me do an introduction with one of our marketing people that otherwise I likely would not have crossed paths with for at least 3 or 4 months, because the aspect of marketing that they work on does not directly tie to enablement. 3 weeks into starting at Lupio, we had our annual conference. And because we already had that relationship, she went, hey, I'd actually love to have you speak and weigh in on a topic that we're doing. So right out of the gate, there was this element of trust, mutual respect, and understanding. So a little reluctantly, because I had a moment of panic, like, what am I supposed to talk about? I've been here for 3 weeks. I can't speak at your conference. But it was an enablement topic, right? And we all have imposter syndrome. But if you focus on your experience, mine was enablement. I can talk about that. But it also then meant that a couple weeks later, I didn't hesitate to reach out to her when I thought, actually, I got a good idea for something we could be doing that doesn't exist today. Phone a friend. Hey, Katie, remember that time? I got something for you. Come play. And having those relationships means you will be so much more successful. So get it in. Don't overwhelm people, but like 2 to 3 coffees a week for their first few weeks for sure. Get those cross-functional relationships going.
Yeah, we do something similar, Steph, where we have kind of this built-in buddy program into that onboarding, so that there's criteria. I think there was a buddy program before, but I'd find that very loosey-goosey in terms of what they were covering. There wasn't a lot of like work chatter, more like, hey, how'd your weekend go? Which, great, again, rapport building. But I will say, I think Wendy in the comments had a question about ambassadors and mentors. And literally this buddy program, I think, one, you're getting people on the floor engaged. They've got some skin in the game, right? I do think that there's ways to, I don't want to say it has to be a spiff, but I think there's ways to encourage involvement, right? Not everyone wants to give the goodness of their heart to everyone, but there is some, I think, skin in the game when you do incentivize people to say like, look, you're a thought leader on the floor. You're a producer. We need you. We need your tribal knowledge. We need your rapport, camaraderie. Teach others to be like you. So we have that going for us. And I think the coffee and the other things are kind of embedded into that checklist. But we find that has been a really good way to immerse people into the floor, build rapport with people, give them that shadowing experience, et cetera.
I wanted to read Wendy's question, and then I wanted to go back to that topic. Do you mind, Morgan?
Sure, go for it.
So Wendy had asked, great question, how do people feel about onboarding ambassadors or mentors from previous cohorts, helping those coming in behind them? The idea of being a peer-to-peer support. So I just want to start this off from one of the experiences I see all the time is that people do this expecting the best to teach the rest, but to do everything. And so one of the things I keep seeing is that they don't get specific. So it's like on social media when we're doing social selling, if somebody tags you in to go and have a comment and add your valuable 2 cents because that is your field of expertise, what do? They don't do it that way. They want you to go and take over everything. There is no defined scope. So I think one of the reasons why all the ambassadors I've ever worked with over the years failed is because they were set up to fail because nobody highlighted what specifically they were supposed to pass on. And instead, basically said the manager went, hey, you can do this because I don't have time. Good luck. And that's how it went.
Enter the trusted spreadsheet. Hold on a second.
Flash it up.
Yeah.
So Wendy, we don't call them ambassadors, but we do this. So we do a buddy system. If you're an SDR that's coming in, you get buddied up with another SDR. You also get a buddy that's an AE. You also get your enablement buddy. So you have at least 3 buddies when you are a new hire, all involved in the revenue cycle, one of which is in the job that you are either onboarding into or ramping into. And we've been really, really specific. So let's say in 1 week of your program, you are learning product knowledge, right? We don't want to, it's not death by product knowledge, but you do need to know it. You are actually going to be tasked with, you have a line item with that buddy. You are supposed to go and sit with that buddy and watch them do a demo of X. After that task, you go in, and we use Lessonly as our LMS. You're going to go in and you're going to do your asynchronous learning on Lessonly. And then you get prompted to record a video of yourself talking about the product feature and functionality. And guess what? That video may tag that buddy to actually evaluate it. And then your 4th step is actually getting validated by your manager. So totally agree with you. That's what I've seen in the past. And trying to get really prescriptive about why and what you want from each person with when is the way to combat that so that it's very, very clear.
I love that. I want to fold this in with the big question, the spicy question that there are lots of takes about, and I'm can't wait to get both of your inputs on this, which is what should be covered in the first 60 days?
Ooh.
We just built, I would like to jump in on this if I can. Our sales coach just built out kind of that blueprint for 30, 60, 90 days for all of the different roles within our sales org. It was something I think I saw again in the comments. Companies typically have a 90-day probationary period, right? Illinois, I think we're at will, but I will just say, there's different compliance laws and different rules of the road for different organizations. I think that the 90-day probationary period is pretty standard. And so you want to set people up for success in terms of what do they need to know in terms of culture? What do they need to know in terms of core values, their roles, specifications, tools, technology, product features, all of the things, right? How do you jam pack all of those things? And to me, it's, again, I hate to keep kind of saying this, it's an evolution. You've got to know basic knowledge, 30 days, this is how you do it. 60 days, okay, I'm getting kind of that intermediary understanding. I'm being able to build that muscle, flex that muscle, right? I'm not looking for mastery by 90 days, but I'm definitely looking for taking the training wheels off and making sure that you're able to do this on your own, that your buddies and your phone of friends aren't getting blown up every 5 minutes in Slack, right? I think there's, it's not perfect, but I would say that we do have that kind of checklist approach. We love our spreadsheets too. I think we have it built into Lessonly. We also use Lessonly, and we also use Lattice to kind of provide the blueprint there, what you're responsible for, what level you're responsible for, and then from there, your manager, I think, then gives you prescriptive next steps to say, your still not understanding sales loft. Let's dig into that. Or you're still not able to pitch XYZ that well. Let's work on this a little bit more, or work with the sales coach.
Jamie, I think on the 90 days, and to Steph's point, yeah, I mean, there's legal reasons why 90 days are in place based on employment legislation in different areas. Here's the reality. Before 90 days.
Yes.
90 days is a line in the sand, often for legal reasons, but And if you think about, I always go to 3 components. So for folks who know me, you know that 2 of the big things I look for in the interview process are attitude and aptitude. So do you have the willingness to learn? Do you have the potential to learn the role? Once you're hired, the third piece that comes into play is competence. And if we think about those 3 areas, you can very quickly determine, does this person have the right attitude for the role? If they are easily stressed out, not having clear answers and a clear roadmap, and you are in a startup organization, that's a yellow flag that you need to keep a close eye on in their first couple of weeks. If they are really struggling to absorb information, and you've tried video delivery, you've tried live discussion, and you've tried async reading delivery, you may have an aptitude problem or an ability to learn problem. And again, you need to be watching that. I always like to go to, at the end of each week, we do a check-in. And so that's a 1-to-1. My line is kick back your feet, put your feet up, talk to me about your feelings. The reason why I do that call is because I'm a neutral party. I'm not their manager. And what happens in that call is a safe place. And what I look to get out of that is, where are they on the attitude and aptitude? Because the competence factor, their manager and their enablement partner on my team is going to be evaluating at the end of each week and at the end of the month. But I need to keep a close eye on the first 2. And the reality is, you can pick up those flags. And if you flag it, action it. So if you pick up on an attitude or an aptitude flag, within that week, you need to go talk to the hiring manager. Did you see this in the interview process? Or is this net new to you? Because maybe it's situational, right? Job stress, when you start something new, it can cause behavioral changes. Totally cool. All right, let's align on what we want to do differently next week to see if we can solve for that challenge that they're having. If by week 3 you're still seeing it, it's likely not a delivery problem or an enablement or onboarding problem. It may be pointing to a cultural fit, a attitude aptitude fit, or again, when we think about competencies, evaluating those competencies, are they progressing like you'd expect them to? And yes, if you've got a gap, go fill it. Totally fine. Some of us learn faster than others. Some of us come in and we may know the tech stack because, Steph, in your reference there, it's like, okay, if you have used Lessonly and you go to work at a competitor of Lessonly, by the way, we're not endorsing that. We're Lessonly customers. However, you may have a lot of industry knowledge and competitive intel that you just show up with on day 1. So when somebody evaluates you, you're going to score higher than expected. Cool. We've all got some of that. And likewise, we've got some gaps. But you should be measuring those things weekly in your onboarding.
But also, conversely, I would say I've had situations where if you've had Salesforce experience or HubSpot or LinkedIn Sales Navigator, other experience, let's say you come from the industry, I've had managers where they tell me, well, this person has 7 years of experience. They don't need your onboarding class. Oh, I hate hearing that. I really don't. Nothing grinds my axe more than when I hear those words. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you spit your water.
That's so good.
But honestly, it is like, first of all, there's a little bit of CYA there, right? Because you want to make sure that everyone is getting the same treatment. Everyone is getting the same program. Because, again, you don't want that employee to come back and say, well, I wasn't trained on how to do X, Y, Z. So, sorry, but legit has been some actual conversations with managers. This person's got 10 years of experience. They don't need this training. They don't need to sit through. Well, they need to learn how we do it this way. They need to know all this stuff. They need to know how we use X, Y, Z, how we talk about this and that. So I don't know, Steph, if you have the same experience in kind of the onboarding and management and other feelings when you're trying to get expedited people expedited to the floor?
Do I have feelings? I do, Steph. I have a lot of feelings. No, I think, like, listen, it's anytime we get into experienced sellers, you know, you are going to run into those salespeople and those sales leaders who say, and unfortunately, I've heard this delivered. Listen, kiddo, I've been selling longer than you've been around, right? Or thanks, girly. Like these generational things happen in particular. And there is some validity to I'm coming in as an experienced entity, right? You hired me as a senior account executive for Enterprise 2 because I have 15 years experience working with Fortune 500s. And I've made huge money and I'm hugely successful. The way I try to combat that when we've got egos happening is just flip the script on it. So like, Steph, I am incredibly impressed by the experience that you're bringing to the org. I would love to hear your perspective on this onboarding session that we have. How can we make it even more effective based on your experience? Like, would love your insights and tidbits that we can interject for the next hiring cohort. Mm-hmm. Is that a little bit sneaky? Sure. But it also gets them engaged and invested in interacting in the program. And by the way, that's a win for us too, because then we come out of their graduation with these great insights. And again, we level up our program. Absolutely. So sometimes it's just a matter of like flipping the script on what's the why they need to do it. But I agree with you. We do have to be conscious of, you know, we want to make sure we have equality. So if people are hired into the same job, we want to make sure that they are onboarded and set up for success the same way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's so true too, I think anymore, especially, I mean, I think of some of the categories we talked about today, like tech and product and problem and prospect knowledge of especially for sellers, but like there's a lot of different workflows for tech in particular at different companies. Like I can talk to 4 different data hygiene people at 4 different companies, and the way that they deal with it at their company is very different across the board. And yes, while that individual seller might have a lot of experience or expertise in the problem knowledge category or the prospect knowledge category, it's not necessarily true that, you know, you could throw them into your CRM and that they would feel comfortable. And yeah, that's not necessarily their whole job, but it sure is a part of like creating a good team dynamic and making sure that they're performing well after they exit that initial orientation and onboarding period. I love the way you laid that out of like, yeah, this is for everyone. Here, let's flip the script. How can we make it better?
Well, and again, you get skin in the game, right? They feel like they're adding value because they are the thought leader, and look, salespeople like their egos stroked a little bit too, right? And so I think kind of handling it in that regard stuff, I think is very smart.
Mm-hmm. I think
you only have to learn that the hard way a couple of times, and then you're just like, oh, this is how we message it.
Yeah. It's a PR message. We're just gonna.
I love that.
I think the irony of that coming from a seller is that a lot of onboarding is just generic. And so like your talk about CRM, it's a reference system. So it's only sold as, here, I'm going to teach you a process, but it's not a process. They're only teaching you technology. And so nobody's actually approaching it like change management. Nobody explains why they need to change. Nobody explains why now. So you get these senior sellers that are saying, why the hell would I change for you when I have been successful doing something else? And you haven't provided me any reason that what I'm doing is materially different than what you're doing. Like, look at list building. How many companies do you start at? They give you a list of 20 people. And if I ask them why those 20, right headcount, right industry, right geography, right revenue, it's like, cool. Why are they guilty until proven innocent? So it's almost like we're actually failing the sales process right off the bat in a lot of companies, where I think it's really neat, and I want to bring it back, is you guys are talking like 201, 301, 401 of this done really, really, really well, and why a seller would want to actually listen to that, where a lot of the experiences I've had, it's like, I don't want to just learn a new technology. I learn a technology. Show me the process so I can understand why it's done the certain way, and why it's aligned with our culture, why it's aligned with what our buyers are asking of us, not just because you want me to do it your way.
I think two things come into play. I mean, social proof is always key. Enablement and internal SMEs should never be creating all the content. As much as possible, get your strong sellers and your not so strong sellers to be creating and delivering content. Here's what I learned. Here's what worked for me. Here's what didn't work for me. Here's what I'm going to do differently, right? A different voice. I think the other thing, and this is actually credit to my SVP, is the pyramid. When we think about the pyramid of knowledge building to output, right? We've got understanding at the bottom. Build your understanding. Then it's about understanding what quality is. Then you move up to quantity. Then you go to output. And so it's your SDR math in particular in reverse, right? Because we're talking about prospecting. So many people go to the output and they're like, you only got, 5 opportunities this month. So, you should have been doing 40. You only did 35. Okay. What was wrong with why didn't you do that? And they go down the pyramid. But think about going up the pyramid to build that knowledge so that they understand what quality looks like before they're worried about the volume of what they're doing. And that's where you integrate some of that social proof. And again, that's credit to my SVP for that nice little pyramid analogy. But I saw it and I was like, that. Yeah. And let's put another line down the other side and let's just put this everywhere. Because I think it speaks to the why. This is everything about what we do in enablement. What's our why?
Can I throw in Jean's question here? It's really good and it plays on what we were just talking about. It takes it a step further. So based on your onboarding plans, how soon do you have SDRs or AEs get on the phone and begin building relationships in pipeline? Who would like to start?
I can.
Sure.
So a couple of differences. SDRs, it will depend a little bit how fast they do their certifications. I mentioned we have certifications in our 1-month onboarding program. Those start in week 1 and they go every week. They're building certifications. So tech stack, who's our ICP, how do you message in a cold call, and we build those muscles. Once they are cold call certified, have at it. Because you've already been certified on how to use the tech stack. You already know who the ICP is. We've already validated that knowledge. So typically that's around week 3, give or take, right? People are going to be a little bit different. AEs, it is different by segment. It is also different based on whether they're internal hire. If you have an SDR who's now graduated into an AE role, they may hit the phones at week 2 because their onboarding plan is going to be a condensed version. Yes, I do an onboarding plan for internal hires going from SDR to AE. And it's basically the 4 weeks condensed into 2. They do need additional product knowledge because they need to be able to do an effective demo, for example, but they don't need to rehash some of the things like what are our key value drivers. But again, they have to go through those same gates, those same live certifications with us, recorded in Lessonly, doing their stuff so that we validate they're good to go. So AEs are somewhere between 2 weeks and 5 weeks, depending on their segment and their experience. And really, it's how fast they go through those certification checks with us.
Anything you want to add? Here.
Mine is very similar as well. I think we have people by week 2, week 3. Again, there's classroom, it's hybrid, there's some on-demand learning, there's certifications for ensuring that you understand tools, the product, the pitch, all of the things. So ours is very similar in nature for both SDRs and AEs.
Yeah. What's really funny about this is, 2 to 3 weeks is such a huge improvement based on some of the things we've talked with sellers about recently. On the podcast, we've had this 5-part series on folks like breaking into tech sales from non-traditional backgrounds. Like we had school teacher, project engineer, financial auditor, folks like who don't really have sales experience and what it was like to basically get an SDR or AE role in B2B tech. And one of the fascinating things was the varied experience of onboarding at different companies where, one was basically thrown on the phones day 2 and or day 3. And the manager was like, you'll learn by more or less practicing on your prospects, good luck sort of thing. And then there are others that have a more structured process like what we've laid out today. And what was fascinating about that was how much, there's never any regret about being thrown into the fire, but I could sense and also have heard from lots of sellers, it is nice to have a sandbox first. It is nice to have that. Yeah. Time.
I was going to say, I think you want to also give your people the opportunity to practice on you versus practice on prospects. Like, to me, that is like not a good first impression for your brand. If they're going out there and you have no idea what they're saying, first of all, it's not been like QA'd, and, giving them the safe space to practice, fail, practice, fail, practice, fly, right? Like, you need to, make that fly analogy, like a baby bird out of the nest. Like,
off with you. Yes, you can do it.
Like, I don't know. I would be terrified just like going into a job, not coming from the industry and expecting someone to be successful in pitching products, services. And I mean, I'm assuming people felt like, I'm just going to hang up on this. I don't even know if that was good or not.
I love the, attempting to fly before you fall. I think this one always, like Stephanie said, grinds my axe. This one always bothers me. I'm not going to pretend I'm like 22 years old, because clearly I'm not. When I started in sales, the north side of 15 years ago, it was very much sink or swim, which is what you're describing. And here's my beef with that. It will never be successful. And people can debate me all day long. Let's do it. But if somebody swims, the leader goes, see, they were fine. Success. They had success. They swam. Okay, let's park that for a second. And if they sink, they go, oh, good to weed them out early. The problem with both of those end results is if the person sinks, we're not talking about actually jumping into a pool with a floaty. We're talking about somebody who has started a new chapter of their life. And we are very much tied to our functions that we choose to do as a profession. Mm-hmm. And the reward system and the intrinsic motivations that a lot of people have are so tightly, ingrained in what it is that they impact in the span of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or whatever your work schedule looks like. So it almost makes it flippant what your career choice is and degrades the person's career path value. But the bigger thing for me is, like, you don't win. If you are the leader of someone who swam, you did not win, because that employee does not trust you. They do not trust the organization, and they've now experienced a trauma. And that is absolutely not enabling an employee. That is not people-focused employment growth. And if we think about, like, how do we make someone successful? Like, sure, you want to throw them in the water? Go for it. But give them a life jacket. And the life jacket analogy, maybe if you're an AE who's 2 weeks in and you've done some of your certifications, but you're not fully ready, have another senior AE on the call so they can step in and help you out. You'll learn together. You'll build that strength. You won't get traumatized. And to Steph's point, you won't have a brand damaging experience for your prospects and customers.
Can I add something in that I found interesting, and it's related but not directly related?
Sure.
It's your show.
It is. I was about to say, it's our show, Nick.
So my little sister, you didn't know, she couldn't speak until she was 6 or 7, like couldn't say anything. And my parents were really worried that she had like neurological problems and all these different things. And they kept trying to diagnose all this different stuff. What was really, really, really interesting is that when it came down to it, we found out she couldn't see. And so her prescription was so bad that she couldn't mimic the words. She couldn't mimic your mouth. So she couldn't see what was going on. And what it made me realize is so much of our life around us is about mimicry. We watch to see what's going on. And for whatever reason, when we get to an adult, people try to change the way that humans work. Why that is, I'm not sure, but we learn by seeing first. So how do you send someone out into the wild to go and fight for their life when you've never showed them what good looks like, what great looks like, what bad looks like? Because it all matters. Like, so you have an AE, you're sending them out to go sell. Have you ever done deal reviews with them? well, that sounds probably like it's not the best thing. Oh, you're going to send somebody out to go and cold call. Well, have you ever showed them what a successful pitch looks like and why it worked, and to what type of customer and what led to that context of reaching out in the first place? Or going through all these different, one thing I even noticed too, like, what if they don't know what good looks like from the customer's point of view? So how do you make promise for something you've never seen the value actually appreciated and realized? So you have sales development, all they're doing is pitching product and features. Well, and maybe this is the next question. Would we be better off to not teach SDRs anything to do with products and features and only hone in on the real problems as they're felt so that they can help our customers understand what they're experiencing? Or are we better off to limit their products and only give them one or two to go in, give them focus? What do you guys think?
I think focus is important, but I think not training them on your products is, oh God, it seems a little detrimental to the process.
So, Morgan, I love how you're like spicy. Yeah, absolutely. So I work at Loopio. For anyone that doesn't know, Loopio is a sales response management platform. Enter an SDR who has never responded to an RFP as a sales professional. They don't know the pain. Part of the challenge is, how do you teach someone who has never felt the pain empathy, not sympathy, not like here's the copyright you need to use, but empathy for what the prospect is experiencing, because then they have the authentic conversations. Can you contrive it? Sometimes. And full disclosure, we put some of our new hires as part of an A/B test through having to do an RFP response by copying and pasting and digging through 50 million documents and not having Loopio to use. And then we gave them the same exercise using our tool. And the light bulb moment for empathy was incredible, because now they understand. We didn't tell them, here's what you say about the value. They felt the pain without it. And then they experienced what the thing we sell does. And they can now connect the dots.
As a former Loopio customer, which is funny, that's how Stephanie and I actually met. I did speak at their LoopyCon. So I can feel the pain, because I lived in the RFP response world for 15 years. Pre and post Loopio, not that I'm selling your product, but yes.
But that's the difference, right? Because we talk about, you need to know enough about your product to be able to understand the value and have empathy, because we got to connect to pain, right? Value selling is about understanding the pain. You want to be a painkiller, not a vitamin in today's market. So you need to understand what the pain of the business is today. Being able to tie the value that your product or service brings to their pain, that's the nugget. And you cannot sit there and tell them, don't be preachy, because if somebody calls me and they're like, I know everything to solve your problem. No, you don't. You don't do my job. You don't nope. Don't say, I totally understand when I answer one of your questions. You don't. Answer with another question, but know where you're going with that question. So long-winded answer to your question of, they need to know enough about your product or service for PK to be effective and know what question to ask next. But their primary focus should be on empathy, understanding, and identifying pain to connect to value, is my hot take on it.
The customer journey at the end of the day. What is the journey of the customer, so that we understand those pain points, so that we can overcome those objections, so we can marry it and then pitch it over to that AE so that they can really sell the value and the solution.
What's really interesting about what you just laid out, having talked with so many account executives in particular that are brought on, not necessarily an internal hire, but like an external hire, is so much of the training and the aha moment, as Dean said, like so much of the training and experience for so many AEs is really product and feature set as if that accurately prepares you for a demo. Whereas, like, even to the example you laid out about going through the RFP process, like if I had to choose an account executive that either got trained on the product feature set or the account executive who went through the process a la a customer would go through the process, that second account executive, I think, screw the demo. Like, the demo's a demo. They're going to have a really interesting conversation with the prospect because they have that empathy and they have that experience being the customer, so that they can mirror interesting topics or have and say genuinely, oh yeah, I just went through that last week, isn't that so frustrating, sort of thing. Like, that's a really powerful way to equip sellers with product knowledge without it just being feature dumping.
I will say no to feature dumping. I would just, I gotta like hop in on that for a quick sec, Morgan.
Yeah.
This is always my thing. Do not talk about features. Don't talk about what it means for the person who's going to interact with the thing. Josh Braun has this great analogy in the story that he shares with people about, he went into a sports store and the salesperson, you know, rather than saying, and some of you may have heard this, like, can I help you with anything? No, because you're closed-ended question, yes, no answer, like you're done. But they proceeded, rather than talking about the features of the latest shoe, you know, are you a runner? Have you ever had a gait analysis? And then you start talking about the difference between foam or gel in terms of weight, distance, springiness, and impact. Then you start talking about you know, you mentioned you ran, 30 miles yesterday. Your knees must be feeling a little bit sore from running in that gel. Have you thought about this, right? Having more of an open dialogue to really get to the root of what is the pain? What is the pain? What is the cause? If you do qualification and discovery well, your AE doesn't have to, because you've accurately identified a valid pain. You're not creating it. It's already there.
I love this.
I'm sure you weren't talking about yourself, because I know you're a runner.
Yeah.
I run in gel, just in case anybody's wondering. It's not about speed for me. It's about distance, and I got a bad back. So, yeah. No, but it was such an amazing analogy, because we often talk about, if you are selling wooden pallets, people will say, well, my wooden pallet is 4 inches bigger than that one. Cool, they don't care about that. If you say my wooden pallet is the standard shipping size that's going to fit in 90% of the transportation trucks in North America, so it's going to mean that you can max out capacity every time you run a truck.
Do you want to come get Load Smart?
Yeah.
I did that for you.
This makes me think of what Megan Misiak had said about you taking this, and to test someone's knowledge. One of the things she would do as part of her onboarding process is give them a set list of customers that she knows all about, get them to do a scrape, or she would teach them. But one of the things she would do to test how well they know this piece that we just talked about is to prioritize them and get them to explain why. And I thought it was just absolutely brilliant. And so she'd get the sales manager to go through, and so she'd only give them 5, just enough that it's not overwhelming. And so everybody would get the same list. So because sales is all about, it's a tacit knowledge, it's a pattern recognition. And where the rubber doesn't meet the road is somebody has a framework and they don't know how to apply it, because they, like I talked about earlier, mimicry. And so you get these 5 accounts. Well, now they can go around and talk to people after they've done the work to go and say how they would do it, to get other people's opinion, to hear that thought process and why. And how does that change the way you look at sales now, when you could take that messaging and spot it from the moment you see an account? I would hire that person.
One interesting thing I didn't want to lose before the end of our time together is, I think, one of you lovely Stephs had talked about cross-functional conversations. And I think we had talked a little bit about mentorship or peer-to-peer and some of that. But what role do other functions of the organization, or what role should other functions of the organization, particularly marketing and success, play in the onboarding path for a seller, if any?
I think they have a big opportunity to influence onboarding. Marketing is not only a partner for lead generation, but collateral, the talk tracks, the what's working out in the field and what's not in terms of infographics and one-pagers. So not just where can you find this stuff on the drive, but like how do they partner with enablement to make sure that the stories are coming to life, and how customer success, I think, talking about that buyer journey, the customer experience, maybe even meeting with a couple of the customers, sitting on a QBR with customers and customer success. I know that we have them as part of our onboarding program for some of the different selling teams today. I view them as partners, and I think there's also, because we have different kinds of sales teams, we're also starting this next for each one, giving a little bit of credo to what each of them do, because they all sell a little differently. And so we're starting to do a little bit of the cross-function panels. I don't want to call it buddy system, but we're going to start doing those a little bit more, because it's felt a little bit like the West Side Story of the Sharks versus the Jets, of like, I do this, no, I do this. And so trying to bring everyone together so that they can all play nice in the sandbox.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think if someone were to give me carte blanche to build a revenue team, first of all, look out. But secondly, I would actually mimic what a lot of the hospitality industry has been doing for decades. Ooh. Which is, if anyone on this call or listening to this has already done some work in the hospitality industry, you may have had a similar experience. A lot of restaurants, if you get hired into a more tenured, senior, or significant role, you do not go into that shift on your first day. And I always go back to, I worked at a very nice place as a server once upon a time in university. And my first week, I had to be a hostess. And I say had to, because my mindset was, what do you mean I have to? I'm already a server. I've already been a server somewhere else. I don't want to go like make reservations. But for an entire week, I was the server. And then I had to go in the back of house. So I was doing expo and like real appreciation for the garnishes being right on every plate. And then I had to go on dishwashing duty, which was a hot mess. That I understand why they wear Crocs. That was not a good look for me. And then finally, in my fourth week, I got to go do my job. And what was really interesting about that, it taught me a true team mentality. It taught me to be humble, no matter how much money I was making compared to the guy in the back kitchen or anybody else. And it wasn't a big ego thing, but it was a good reality check. But most importantly, thinking back on that experience, what it showed me was the first day I went to serve the food, I already intimately understood everything that was happening in front of and behind the scenes for that customer journey. So I knew what their experience was when they had called to make their reservation, when they came into the front door, when they got seated, when their food got ordered, what was happening in the back of the kitchen. I understood all the things that could go wrong, because when plates are flying and it's hot and people are screaming back there, sometimes you forget a garnish. Sometimes mushrooms go on something that it's not supposed to. And by the way, people complain about, doing busing and bringing dishes to the back, but like plates get chipped if you're going too fast and if you overload the rack, and that's just the reality. And so by the time you now have gotten the order of your customer and you've brought them their food and you bring them their bill and they're about to give you your tip, you have a real appreciation for the entire machine that is part of that customer journey. And yeah, Dean, we are all in the hospitality business. I love that you just called that out. This is something I've been reflecting on a lot lately, that some of the best business and customer focused training I ever had was working part-time in the hospitality industry going through university.
I think any service-led position, right? Being a servant. And I think that that's why I've also been in the hospitality industry myself, and burned my hand more than a few times I'd like to admit by grabbing a hot plate and being like, oopsie, didn't mean to do that. But you're absolutely right. I feel like we could learn a thing or two and actually implement some of those processes from restaurants and other things that allow you that, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that implicates that and that and that. Oh boy, this gives me a brand new viewpoint of how to approach my role.
And so the analogy with revenue teams, right? If you're hiring in an AE, that's your table server. And Morgan, I'll do this quick because I know we're at time.
That's fine.
Walk a mile as in the marketing team for demand gen. Understand how they booked that inbound lead. Then go be the SDR that does the qualification call. Then go be the customer success manager that's handling onboarding and retention and renewal and customer service concerns. And then you go be the AE that actually puts together the solution and closes the deal.
Can I just dogpile that really quick? No, I was just.
This show will never end. I've just decided.
Could you imagine if you got the
close.
reps going through those steps to write about their experience, so they have just a one-pager that everyone could read after to see what everybody else experienced as like a summary, and then you had it in a centralized doc so everybody could just zoom through, or you just reviewed it monthly as a team meeting, like.
What if it was a lessonly experience? It's almost like a Dear Diary. Like every day at first shift, you had to tell them, like, Dear Diary, today, blah, blah, blah. XOXO best girl. Just kidding.
The main thing that I've learned today is
We're silly? Maybe it was
no,
silly.
we just need to schedule for like 2 hours next time. So thank you both first for dropping so much wisdom, for sharing so much that's going on in your own companies. I feel educated. I feel not only did I learn some things today, but I also feel that any enablement person, any sales manager, any director who's listening to this in the future or watching this in the future can genuinely take away some of the things that both of you brought up and implement it in their own organization if they haven't already. So thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful insights and wisdom with us today. And I assume the best place to find both of you is on LinkedIn, right? Is that true? Okay.
It is.
It's true.
Then if you want to connect with either of the Stephanies, Sparkplug Steph or Savage Steph, please that's not what you type into the LinkedIn search bar, but you know what I mean. And and Nick, do you want to close us out today?
I just want to say thank you to you two. As we were going through this, the thing that kept going through my mind is if I would have had you guys through my onboarding, it would have changed my career because you guys do it right. So thank you so much. It means a lot. You're doing good work for the industry.
Yeah.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thanks, everybody. And
Thank
we'll see you on the next B2B Power Hour.